Thank you all for coming tonight. I won't say anything prefatory. Well, I just did, didn't I? Yeah. Well, I was born on West 30th Street in a little hospital called the French Hospital, no long extant. If you'd asked my father why was I born there, he would say because he wanted to be close to his mother. My father was kind of a joker. Okay. All right. Tough crowd. We lived in, until I was 12 years old, we lived in one of the garden apartments in Jackson Heights. Jackson Heights, this has something to do with what I'm going to tell you. Jackson Heights is famously known as definitely, not probably, the most ethnically diverse neighborhood in the United States of America. When I was raised there in the 40s, it was completely white, totally. New York was a segregated city. We don't think of it that way. We think of the South being segregated, but it was segregated neighborhood by neighborhood. And then we moved to Westchester. And when I was 15 and beginning to commit adolescence, I took a summer job caddying at a local country club. What's the difference between a country club and a golf club? A swimming pool. Country clubs have swimming pools. Golf has, so if you've learned nothing tonight, you've learned that. And I was 15 and it was perfectly positioned in a way. Rebel Without a Cause had just come out. Rock and roll, as it's now called, is just started as rhythm and blues became that. And a contemporary of mine's friend called us the original teenagers, which we were. At any rate, I started caddying. I was young and 15 years old and pretty skinny, so I didn't get out very often, or I was late to get out. So I'd hung around the caddy shack a lot, the place where caddies killed time before they were called up by the caddy master, who was called the Sparrow. I don't know why. It was derogatory for sure. But he would call us up on a creaky intercom, then you go up and get out. But I got out of the house. It was cool to be out in the summertime. And I got to meet, almost everybody was older than I was. I got to meet adults and hang out with them at the caddy shack for hours and hours. There were some other kids my age. There were a couple of, they were called rummies at the time. One of them apparently slept in the woods and on the just off the 17th fairway. But then there was another group that was very new to me, and these were professional caddies. They worked. That was their livelihood. They worked around year round. They were migratory caddies. Westchester in the summer and West Palm Beach in the winter. They were all black, and I was white, whiter than white. And I was fascinated with being so close to black men. I was also a child, basically, and they were grown-ups. And I got to hang around the card table with them, not speaking anything to them, but just observing them. And, I loved the way they smoked. I'd go home and look in my bedroom mirror and try to smoke like that. It was pathetic. At the same time, I was sort of desperate. One of them summarized their migratory patterns by saying, one set of clothes. Now, that's the way that went. But we had very little in common. When the summer was over, I went back to high school. They got on a Greyhound. It's called taking the dog south, an interesting expression. There were plenty of them that I'd memorized and used at school as if I'd made them up. But again, we didn't have much in common except caddying and making fun of members. We all loved to do that. The overweight ones, mostly the cheapskates. And I just want to remind you of how long ago this is. A pack of cigarettes cost $0.25, okay? if you carried a bag of clubs in a bag of clubs, um, 18 holes, you got $3.50. If you got a tip, it would be $4. With $4, you could buy 16 packs of Luckies. I didn't, but I could have. And I started feeling I was on the road to financial independence at that point. Um, I'll move ahead a little bit here. I started to wonder about these guys that I wasn't really hanging out with. I was more observing. I just wondered about what kind of lives they had. I was a very sheltered kid. To be moving back and forth and not really have much of a home, probably no families. I didn't know much about them, but I knew they were very different from me. And I couldn't imagine what that would be like. We got to be friendly, but not really friends. But then moving forward just a little bit, I became, well, let's get to this. The drinking age in New York State was 18. I was 17, but that was close enough for these guys, the black caddies, to invite me down to the bar where they drank. Come on down to the bar some night, Bill. I kept hearing this. At first, I thought they were joking. And then I realized I was afraid to go down to the bar because the white boys never went down to that part of town except by daylight and for only one reason, to go to the record store where you could buy rhythm and blues. Could buy songs by Laverne Baker and Hank Ballard and the Midnighters singing Annie Got a Baby. You didn't hear that on the radio. And the Orioles and the Ravens and other groups. And but one night I did go to the bar. It was occasioned by having a teenage argument with my parents. And I remember storming out of the house that night and thinking, how can I get back at my parents? And I thought, I know, I'll go down to that bar and get stabbed. And that will teach them a good lesson. Of course, I went down to the bar by myself. The bar was called the Bradhurst, which now reminds me of apartment buildings on the Upper West Side that have awnings. The Bradhurst, right? We have an apartment at the Bradhurst. And it was a great bar, a fantastic bar, a neighborhood bar, friendly, an incredible jukebox, a long bar, more like an expanded bowling alley with a mirror that kind of ran the length of it. And it was I never left. I went there all through college and beyond in the summertime. And until it was demolished along with the rest of the black neighborhood there to make room for civic buildings, courthouses, and such. And there was only one incident that I was at the bar one night with my caddy friends, and I kept getting stared at by a guy who was at where the bar turns like that, so he could see me. And I was avoiding his look. It was a look not of admiration necessarily, although I pictured myself as maybe my white face was kind of like a pedal in the Ezra Pound poem about the Metro. But that was not what he was thinking about. And suddenly he was in my face and grabbing my arm and saying, "What business have you got in here, white boy?" And then my two friends, just as he uttered those words, somehow both picked him up just enough off the floor to escort him in an orderly fashion out the door. And on returning, one of them said to me, "There's a lot of dumb people in this world, Bill," which was my name then. And then I started self-questioning. I thought, what am I doing in there? What what business do I have in that bar? What was I trying to escape the boredom of white middle class suburban life? Fuck yes. But what else was I doing in there? Was I a tourist? Was I trying to make friends? What was I doing in an atmosphere where I didn't belong, yet I felt a very special sense of belonging? Or did I just want to be cool? Something that drives men mad. It's such an old slang word, goes back to at least Lester Young. It's about 85 years old and still serviceable. It shouldn't be called slang anymore. Just the word cool puts me in mind of a couple of things. Of a piece of graffiti I saw in a men's room in Galway, Ireland, sometime. Wait, you'll find out why. A long time ago. You'll find out how long. And the graffiti said, "Remember, when Miles Davis dies, we all move up one step." And the other thing it reminded me of was a Terry Southern story in Red Dirt Marijuana was the name of the short story collection. It's about a white guy in Paris in the 50s who's trying madly to fit into the black jazz scene there without success. And he's got the walk, he's got the talk, he's got the vines, he's trying as hard as he can. Finally, he breaks down and asks one of the players, "How come nobody accepts me?" And the guy says, It's because you're too hip, baby. And that was that was it. Um, so I did I was there, I think, for friendship, and male friendship has always been really important to me. And it wasn't until much later that I came across the best definition of friendship I've ever heard, and that is friendship is a relationship without purpose. You don't want anything from the other person. He doesn't want anything from you. Well, there is one thing you want, and it's the only thing you want, and that is to spend time together, right? That's the whole point of it. So I didn't have any business in the bar. That's business. Friendship is not business. Okay, now quickly, we're going to jump to West Palm Beach. That's where they caddy in the in the winter. And I told them that one time they said, if you're ever in Florida, because I mentioned spring break or something, one of the caddies gave me a phone number, and I got down to Florida on spring break. We were too hip to go to Fort Lauderdale and chasing girls around. We went to the Sebring 12-hour Grand Prix, the motor race in Florida. But eventually I got over to Palm Beach, and I called West Palm Beach. I called a phone number. It was the phone number of a boarding house. I got directions, went over there, got to the boarding house. Some of my friends were there, but I was greeted with huge gales of laughter because the guys down there described me as Big Bill. And I was, again, I'm still white. And they didn't mention that. So in I walked, and the women there especially just were slapping their knees. Pretty soon it was time to go to the bar in West Palm Beach. So 5 of us got in the big old, it was a Oldsmobile or big Buick, 4-door. Two guys in the front. My friend John Pickens, Easy Pickens is his name. And 2 guys in the back, and me between the 2 guys in the back. So we're driving to the bar. It's 1958, maybe in Florida, and the driver says, "Bill, get your head down a little bit." So I thought I was obstructing his rear view, so I got down a little bit. And he says, "Bill, get down a little more." I got down, and then I felt on the back of my head, one of the guys in the back is just pushing me gently, but very firmly down onto the floorboards. And there I stayed for no more than 4 or 5 minutes. And someone said, "It's okay, you can get up now, Bill." I got back up. So what I found out later, the reason was we were leaving a black neighborhood, and in order to get to the other black neighborhood where the bar was, we had to go through a white neighborhood. 4 black guys driving a car with a white teenager in the back, not a good thing. 1956 Florida. So that's why I had to hide. So everything sort of got topsy-turvy for me. The white neighborhood was dangerous. The black neighborhoods were friendly. And that gave me, I had to recalibrate about that. Did we have fun at the bar when we got there? We probably did. I don't remember. All I remember is that I was very concerned. I was very worried about the danger we would face when we drove back to the boarding house if we took the same way that we did when we got here. Period.